My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
And we have a wonderful two guests today. We're starting off with Colonel Tony Shaffer, who we had on a couple of weeks ago. And Tony is absolutely a fantastic expert on foreign policy and national security, and professional intelligence officer of senior aide both to the White House and the Pentagon. A man who's written extensively, commented extensively, is a commentator on radio and television. He's really the go-to guy on the big issues affecting world peace and the security and insecurity of the United States. So, Colonel Shaffer, something happened in Russia last week, and people are still scratching their heads. Who won, who lost, what it was all about, and what the ramifications are. So I'm talking about I guess the Germans call it a putsch, P-U-T-S-C-H.
Yeah.
And was it a game? How serious was it? Tell us about it, please.
So, Judge, thank you for having me again. And, we're still sorting through it. And it's very interesting at this point that even here we are halfway through this week, people are still trying to figure it all out. Let's start with the foundation and go back. One of the things they're doing right now, their foreign minister, Lavrov, is, quote unquote, doing an investigation to find out if there's any NATO or U.S. involvement in this attempted push or coup or insurrection, depending on which word you want to pick based on one sentiment. And it was interesting the other day when they announced this investigation, one of the first people to say there was no involvement was a guy named Joe Biden. He was on the air saying, "Oh, what nuts." And, it's the old Shakespeare thing, thou dost protest too much. My theory on this, and, we'll see if I'm correct or not, I think the guy who ran the attempted coup, who ran Wagner, this guy named Prigozhin, actually reached out to the West. And remember, Judge, there was indications that the Gang of Eight, the senior intelligence oversight members of both houses of Congress, were briefed last week on this. So something happened. So I have a sense that we, the United States, had a sense this was coming. The question becomes, what, if anything, did the Biden folks consider? And you and I have talked about this before, Judge. Theoretically, the Biden administration is supposed to be supporting Ukraine in the war. Katie barred the door. If they didn't tell the Ukrainians this was coming and say, get on your horses, get on your offensive, and do the offensive over the weekend during this chaos, then they made a huge mistake, because that would have been the best time, Judge, for the Ukrainians to roll out there while Putin was in chaos. That would have been the best time. But apparently they missed the window. And so this is something we need to look at. But do I believe there was actually a coup? Absolutely. I think that Prigozhin somehow believed that he could do it. Now, the reason it fails is because he didn't have the three elements necessary to be successful. First, he would have had to grease the skids of all the other oligarchs. You don't do that, you're not going to get anywhere. And he clearly didn't do that. And my friend Brigadier General Blaine Holt, retired, and I both said on air over the weekend, he doesn't have the throw weight to complete this. The second thing he needed was the military, the Russian military, which he didn't have. He alienated the military during the time of his assault in Bakhmut using Wagner, because he was constantly yelling about the military not supporting him. There's no general going to come over and help him. And most importantly, the people of Russia. He made no direct plea to them. As much as Wagner is very popular, they are seen as a hero organization to the Russian people because of what they've done. No amount of popularity of Wagner was going to translate to Prigozhin. So in the end, Judge, I think this was something that did potentially weaken Putin. We're going to see how the Chinese, Indians, and other non-aligned nations jump into this and see it. But in the end, I think in many ways, Prigozhin, the guy who ran this, is a dead man walking. I think a polonium-210 cocktail is in his future, no matter what happens in Belarus, where he's been sent on his exit from being the director of Wagner.
Jesse.
Colonel, thank you for being with us.
Yes,
and I understand where we are with this and where we're still trying to figure out. I'm not surprised, though, as you described, that the Biden administration, if they were involved, missed the window. That's been the testament of their administration over the course of the last 2.5 years. But despite the fact that whether it be contrived or maybe the West being involved, whatever the source of it, has this action, it's a two-part question. Number one, has this action, as you said, may have weakened Putin in some cases, but is that going to stir the people of Russia to maybe take a second look at what they've been living through and what their leadership and Putin has been taking them through over the last several years, especially in this where the exposure of the Russian military has been conducted here with the Ukrainian war. That's number one. Number two, the role that Belarus played in bringing in this peace negotiation or this ceasefire or whatever you want to call it between the Wagner group and Putin. Does that elevate them in the region, on the world stage? Where does that put them?
So let's start with the second part first. So, yeah, I think Belarus is seeking to essentially reconfirm it's part of Putin's empire. I mean, Lukashenko, the president, made this deal. Remember, I always try to tell people this is not don't try to put our framework on what's going on over there. Our framework of political, military, and diplomatic process doesn't apply to them. Imagine, if you will, Tony Soprano, an episode of The Sopranos meets The Hunt for Red October. That's what we're seeing. These people are thugs. So just kind of imagine that. And so, yes, you have all these thugs. Lukashenko's known Putin and Prigozhin forever. I mean, these guys literally are like mafiosos. So just look at it that way. Like, these guys are all mafiosos, and when they decide to rub one or other out, they put them in a boat, take them out in the river. Sometimes it really is sometimes that dramatic. So the first part of your question then regarding the people are still completely behind Putin. They've seen Putin turn the economy around despite the sanctions, and they're with him. And by the way, Wagner is seen as a very popular organization. And it's not just about Wagner being a paramilitary force that does dirty deeds. I mean, that's why they were created. Wagner is actually created from the DNA of the GRU, the Russian Military Intelligence Service. They actually have officers running it. And Prigozhin was more of, you look at a baseball team, he was more of the manager, not the coach. The coaches are the general officers who left the GRU and are out doing things. And Wagner, are a global tool of Russian foreign policy. They do the dirty deeds in Syria. We've actually dropped bombs on them. My friend Joe Dunford, when he was chairman, he had to drop bombs on Wagner in Syria because they were trying to go after some of our Kurds that we were supporting. And then at the same time, they do the things in Africa. And most importantly, I think for the purposes of your question, they're the ones that provide all the personal security for Russia, for the Chinese endeavors all over the planet. Russians provide for the Chinese, because the Chinese don't have an inherent system of protection. They actually do it for them. So these things all come together to show that for better for worse, everything is going to continue on in Russia without much interference from the outside.
Well, that's very interesting.
If you're having problems with your septic system and you're tired of spending so much money each year to have it pumped, then SeptiClean is the answer for you. SeptiClean is an advanced specially formulated blend of bacteria used in the treatment of home and commercial septic systems. The breakdown of waste in your system relies on biological activity of naturally occurring bacteria. SeptiClean restores the natural biological process in your septic system and boosts the existing biological activity. SeptiClean is completely completely safe on all plumbing and can help prevent expensive emergencies in pumping. SeptiClean has approximately 6 to 100 times the bacteria count of other leading off-the-shelf brands in a 1-year supply. SeptiClean comes in a water-soluble pack, which you flush down the toilet once a month with no mess or stress. Save time, money, and maintenance on your septic system. Find SeptiClean at Emporium True Value Hardware on Main Street in Sag Harbor, or visit micro-tab.com. That's micro-tabb.com. Micro-tabb.com.
This episode is brought to you by GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco. Get the most out of your vehicle with GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco original equipment. The only parts designed, engineered, tested, and backed by General Motors. You can find your perfect fit for most makes and models and choose from 3 tiers of parts, including GM OE or gold and silver aftermarket parts. Visit gmparts.com for more information.
2 things come to mind, Tony. The first thing is the Wagner role diminished? Is it be absorbed into the Russian military apparatus? And is that a good thing or a bad thing for Russian interests? Or certainly I'm more concerned about our interests. And the other thing that really concerns me about it, again, like Jesse, a 2-parter, I never believed that there was going to be a breakup of the Putin control. It just didn't seem to me that all the pieces were there, and you were absolutely right the way you articulated it. But I'm always fearful of breakup states. I'm always fearful of fallen regimes, and in a system with God knows how many thousands of nuclear weapons, who's going to control what? And those are my 2 concerns. So would you address yourself to those 2 issues?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, sir, Judge. Look, I share that. When I saw Jennifer Rubins and Malcolm Nance and all those on the left cheering about the upcoming removal of Putin with the replacement of Prigozhin, it's like Prigozhin is like worse than Putin. One of Prigozhin's issues was they went too slow and didn't kill enough people in Ukraine. So the idea that him replacing Putin as a step up, that's not good. And the other thing to remind people, we've seen what happens when you have the failure of governance. The failure of governance in Syria resulted in ungoverned space, which created ISIS. The removal of Gaddafi and Libya without a plan and understanding of how to maintain their government resulted in the chaos we still see in Libya. So just think, Judge, for the second, we go about encouraging and doing this, and we have a failed state in the form of something as large as Russia with literally the largest nuclear weapon stockpile on the planet. Katie barred the door, because if you think it's bad now with mafia having all sorts of access and all these oligarchs, my friend, and you probably know him, Ambassador Hank Cooper, Hank ran SDI under President Bush 41. Hank and I did something about 12 years ago regarding loose nuclear weapons and what would happen in a failed state where the Russian nuclear weapons became available in the black market. Back then, Judge, the price was about $600 million per warhead. I'm sure it's gone up. But you have 2 or 3 of these things go through the Black Sea. We actually charted it out. We figured out how the black market would move them as a format. That's one thing we dare not want, or that we allow to happen. So as much as Putin's bad and evil, I get it. He's a thug. We have to understand the consequences of his removal regarding the very issues you're talking about. So, again, I always get worried when I see the left cheering on the destruction of Putin and Russia, when it's like, I don't think you understand that the next guy behind him is probably going to be potentially even worse.
Yeah, but go back to the other point I'm concerned about. If Wagner now is staged out of Belarus, is that a good thing, a bad thing? Has anything changed? Has everything changed? What does that really mean? Because as you correctly point out, Wagner is the enforcer for the Russians and the guarantor for the Chinese. Right. And what does this mean? Is Putin really going to try to diminish them, or is he just going to have the other guy fall out of a window or drink the wrong cocktail?
That's what he's going to do, the latter. And then, because that's why I think Putin moved so swiftly to try to cut this deal, Judge, is to literally get Wagner back under state control and out from under the control of Prigozhin. Again, they Wagner, for better or for worse, were created to work outside of the Russian legal system. They literally do things which would be illegal for the Russian military to do. That's why they did the assault on Bakhmut. That's why they do things in places like Syria and Africa. So they are literally an off-the-books operation that is a critical tool to Putin. And yeah, I don't think they're going to change much other than who they answer to. And by the way, Judge, I don't think they're going to be long reporting to the military because, again, if they try to follow their own law, they can't do some of the off-the-books things. The military cannot do off-the-books things that Wagner does. So I think Putin saw that the danger here, wanted to get rid of an annoyance in the form of Prigozhin and still retain Wagner as a tool of foreign policy that he's going to rely upon for the rest of the time he's in office.
Jesse.
Colonel, just staying in Belarus and Wagner for a moment, we said that it's going to, number one, following their own laws. I don't think that, we can expect Russia to follow their own laws or anybody to follow their own laws. But I did see the president of Belarus say that the 25,000 troops from Wagner that were marching towards Moscow would be able to stay within Belarus for a period of time. Now, he also commented on the benefit of having this elite army force in Belarus. Now, I know that there's some, as you point out, there's some concerns whether or not that they're going to be able to be folded in, or the military, the Russian official military working with them. But what does this mean, Belarus even being a player in that region even further, maybe not diplomatically or from a perception of prominence or having their stature raised, but having those 25,000 elite army troops sitting there? And will be Belarus now that dispatches them, that deploys them? Will they be working with the head of Wagner and such to do that, or what is that? Where do you see that going?
That's a great question. So I see it going in that part of why they're doing that is to basically figure out who within that number, the 25K, were actually kind of lied to, because there are some reports that some of these guys didn't know they were going to Moscow to overthrow Putin. They were told something different. So obviously they want to figure out, because they are a resource, they're a valuable resource. You don't want to be, literally telling people who don't deserve it. And I'm a little bit light about it, but that's what they don't want. So this gives them some time and space to sort through that. Putting them in Belarus with Prigozhin, they have some time to sort. I understand that most officers who came out of the GRU who joined Wagner did not join this effort to go to Moscow. So there's a distinction with a difference on who within Wagner was supporting Prigozhin, and they want to figure that out. And then those who were lied to. But no, ultimately the control goes back to Moscow. It goes back to Putin. And yeah, I understand what you're saying. They don't follow their own laws, but they want the people of Russia to believe they are. Remember, so much of what we're talking about is perception. So in the mind of the Russian people, because this is where we started, this is one of the questions we talked about, is are the people behind Putin? Well, yeah, they are, but they're lied to half the time. It's like the number of casualties. Prigozhin chose to speak the truth about that. The casualties are way higher than what they've reported. We all know that. But it's all about the fact that the people of Russia believe what they're told, and that's what Putin's trying to preserve. We don't matter to them. It's more about what his people believe and what he can get them to believe. And so that's where Wagner's going to go back under Putin's authority after they do the sorting process. And I think the Russian people will continue to accept, as long as the lies are believable, they're going to accept the lie.
Well, for the purposes of this discussion, and I apologize, Judge, let's say that the United States was involved, the West was involved, and in this case, the West and the United States did not give Ukraine a heads up. This is when you should move on militarily while Wagner's doing this over the weekend. How would you rate, if it was an effort from the West or the United States, how would you rate that effort, and what would be the resulting grade you would give it?
So maybe 1 out of 10. And look, I was talking to Ed Meese this week. As you know, Ed was the Attorney General for President Reagan, and Ed and I are friends, and he's one of my friends and mentors. So Ed and I were just kind of going through how the Reagan administration would have done it. As you all know, I think, and remember, Ed was very close to President Reagan. So he was just kind of gaming it out with me. It's like, though, these are the things we would have done. And I can tell you, they played the Russians, the Soviets back then, like it was a chess match. They actually played hard, and they won. So Ed's point, and it would take too long to go through some of the things we talked about, but suffice it to say that Ed basically pointed out, and I agree with him, the Biden administration has no ability to speak the language of the Cold War. The Russians are speaking the language of the Cold War. These things that are happened during the Cold War. And so the fact that you have an administration which is so tone deaf and lacking internal intelligence to understand context or act on it is a real disservice to the national security of our nation. I simply put, I don't think Tony Blinken, I don't think Lloyd Austin have the smarts necessary to outthink Putin, even when opportunities like this are given to them.
Well, Colonel Shaffer, I want to thank you very much. Jesse Garcia and I are very, very honored to have you on the show. To our audience, we've been talking with Colonel Tony Shaffer, a renowned expert on U.S. foreign policy, military intelligence, and strategy, a great commentator on radio and television, a great writer. Tony, that was absolutely wonderful. Thank you for being with us, and we look forward to having you again on Let the Record Show with Chairman Garcia and myself. Thank you.
Judge, thank you. It's always an honor to join you. Thank you.
If you're having problems with your septic system and you're tired of spending so much money each year to have it pumped, then SeptiClean is the answer for you. SeptiClean is an advanced specially formulated blend of bacteria used in the treatment of home and commercial septic systems. The breakdown of waste in your system relies on biological activity of naturally occurring bacteria. SeptiClean restores the natural biological process in your septic system and boosts the existing biological activity. SeptiClean is completely safe on all plumbing and can help prevent expensive emergencies in pumping. SeptiClean has approximately 6 to 100 times the bacteria count of other leading off-the-shelf brands in a 1-year supply. SeptiClean comes in a water-soluble pack, which you flush down the toilet once a month with no mess or stress. Save time, money, and maintenance on your septic system. Find SeptiClean at Emporium True Value Hardware on Main Street in Sag Harbor or visit micro-tab.com. That's micro-tabb.com. Micro-tabb.com.